This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. In the words of the immortal AC/DC, it is harder than it looks. These interviews will give you a glimpse into the lives of the artists that we've sung along with, danced and rocked out to. Some go deep into their past and others celebrate their recent releases. But all of them show that regardless of who you are, it's always a long way to the top. John Karabi started his music career in 1989 as the frontman of The Scream, and then in 1992, some may say that the stars aligned as he was made the lead singer of one of the biggest bands in hard rock, Motley Crue, replacing Vince Neil for a period of 4 years. Since then, this rock journeyman has collaborated with some of the biggest hard rock bands around, including Ratt, Brides of Destruction, Union, ESP, and more recently, the US-Oz collaboration, the Dead Daisies, replacing frontman John Stevens. John Corabi is back in Australia doing a stripped-down solo tour, and he's here to give us all the details. John Corabi, welcome to the show, or should I say Karabi? That's your nickname, right?
Yeah, just Mick Mars, thank you. When I first joined Motley, he would, in his gruff little voice, he'd go, "Hey, Karabi." And then it went from "Hey, Karabi" to "Hey, Karab." And it somehow morphed into Karabi. So that's been since 1994. It's stuck. Everybody calls me Karabi. And like I was just saying, I'll go out on a date with a girl or something like that, and a buddy will come up to me and go, "Hey, Karabi." And then he's like, "Okay, can I get the check, please? I got to go."
Of course. Now, we want to talk about your time in Motley Crue, but before we do that, and, you probably need to have therapy after that conversation, but before we do that, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. Now, this is a book that's coming out that I think has probably been the longest lead time in history. I think it was about 2020 that you started the process with it?
Actually, I discussed it with Paul Miles. I don't know if you're familiar with Paul. He's from Melbourne.
Right.
And I've known Paul forever. He had a website called, or he still does actually. It's called Chronological Crew. And he traveled with me when I was down there. I was actually, I was brought down to do 4 shows doing the Motley 94 record in its entirety. Right. So Paul traveled with us, and we were just talking out in front of the thing and telling stories. And Paul, I didn't really want to do a book, but Paul really kind of instigated the whole thing. And he was sitting there saying, like, he goes, Karabi, he goes, I know you had chapters and stuff in the dirt, but you don't realize, like, you're kind of like this guy that comes out of the woodwork and you're like, "Hey, check out my new record." And then you just kind of disappear again. So he said, "You've always been kind of this enigma. Nobody really knows that much about you. I think you should do a book. Let me write it with you." And I left in 2019 and I was busier than hell the rest of the year. And then 2020 came and we started talking again. And I said, "Well, you know what? I thought about it. If you want to do this, let's do it." Well, then COVID hit and I suddenly found myself with a lot of time on my hands.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? This is perfect. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
And, so it just kind of worked out the way it worked out,
You said in an interview that your ex-wives won't be happy with the book. Well, actually, you said that it would piss them right off.
There's one in particular. Again, I wasn't trying to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, I hate to say it, she's remarried now and she's got kids, and but I'm just telling my story. And I'm being very open and frank about it. And if it pisses anybody off, I apologize. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like, I was just kind of expressing not so much the story, but like my mental thought process and how these things affected me. Not even bad things like that, just even the good things like joining Motley Crue and how I had to cope with, joining a band that was already very established, huge band. They're the idiosyncrasies of everybody in that band. And it's like a story about me trying to process, like, how do I fit in? How do I, you know what I mean? So again, the book wasn't meant to throw anybody under a bus. It's just talking about my headspace going through all the ups and downs in my life.
And I think that's a really important discussion to have as well. I don't think men do that often enough. And I'm assuming that particularly in your industry, the whole rock and roll industry, it's not a big thing for, call it rock and roll, kings and queens to be really having those discussions. So I think it's not only a brave move in a lot of aspects, but a really important one as well. Don't you?
You know what's funny? A few years back, I got an email, which I still get on a somewhat regular basis, from some of the Motley fans. And this guy wrote to me, and he was, initially he was like, "You're a loser. Like, I can't believe, like, you suck. You should have never been in the band." And,
Wow.
and, I found myself, I don't normally respond to those guys.
Sure.
But I wrote the guy a letter back, and I said, "Look, man, like, just for once, put yourself in my place."
Yeah.
And I went through everything, how I was in a band and I was making okay money, but my son got diagnosed with diabetes. My mom was dying of cancer, and like all this shit. And I put it into perspective, and you get offered not only the opportunity to join one of the biggest bands in the world and elevate yourself on a professional level, but on a personal level, you're going to be able to pay and take care of your family in a better way. And so I told him this, and suddenly he wrote me back. He goes, "Oh, I never looked at it that way." Okay, well, just from my point of view. So again, writing the book, Paul kind of said, nobody really knows you.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a little backstory on my grandparents moving from Italy to America. Here's a little back history on my parents, what they were like. And then this somewhat awesome life up until about age 10 when my parents divorced. And then everything took a, left turn. And again, it's not to throw my parents under the bus. It's not to throw my siblings under the bus, but this is just me explaining what I was going through and what my brain was doing to try and process everything.
Yeah.
And, I had some shit times when I was younger where I was a little bit of a, I could have gone either way. I could have been a musician or I could be in prison right now.
So music pretty much saved your life, right?
I pretty much made the right choice, but I was running with a pretty rough crowd when I was younger. And again, this was, I had people come into my life that were trying to straighten me out and make me realize that this is the path you should take. And it's just the whole thing, everything, the marriages, the bands that I was in, the fights that I had in the bands and the marriages. This is just, 450 pages of verbal diarrhea of me just going, this is what I was thinking when I was doing this.
Yeah.
Or when I was going through this. How did I process this? Well, I processed it like this. And it, from the beginning to right up until a couple of years ago, right before, COVID hit.
So
So
how did it all come
pretty
about with, because you were in the band The Scream, right? And that was like, heavy stuff, right? A really good hard rock band. And then you've gone into Motley Crue. How did that come about?
It was just all Nikki did an interview in a magazine, and a fan handed it to me. And at the end of the magazine, like most interviews, or they used to, they would go, "Oh, hey man, what are you listening to nowadays? What do you listen to?" And he just went on this thing about how much he loved the Scream, and so I saw the ad, I saw the article, and fan gave it to me, and I read it, and we had a show in LA. We were home, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to call him and call their management company, leave a message for Nikki, and just say thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm literally hung the phone up, walking away from the phone, and it wasn't 2 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was Tommy and Nikki telling me they were going to come to the show that night. And then they kind of on the down low, they said, "Hey man, listen, nobody knows this yet, but Vince is out. We want you to come down and jam with us." And I was as dumbfounded as the next guy, because that wasn't my intention at all. I was calling them to say, "Hey guys, thanks for the plug."
Yeah. Yeah. And look, in my opinion, that album, which was self-titled, was, I feel, one of the best albums that Motley Crue released. What was it that sort of didn't gel? I mean, why didn't it take off as good as what it should have?
Here's the thing. Like, there's so many. 1994 for Motley was the perfect storm for something not working. There was a bunch of factors leading up to me even joining the band, with the record label. Then the climate of music was changing. Like, at that point, you got to remember, nobody gave a shit about bands like Motley or Poison or Bon Jovi. It was like, please. It was all about Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana.
Yep.
Nirvana, like all that stuff. You know what I mean? It was like, so I come in, I joined this band. We did the record, and literally within weeks of the song coming out and the record being released, everybody, and I'm literally talking the entire staff at Elektra, 53 people were fired.
Wow.
So no support there.
Yeah.
Nikki, if you follow the band, Nikki got into a verbal argument with the people from MTV.
Yeah.
And they just said, "Okay, fine. We're not going to play your shit anymore." And then the fact that the music industry was changing.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, we probably shouldn't have called it Motley Crue. So it was just a combination of so many different things. And, but the one thing that I will say is the record has held up well.
Yeah.
It still sounds as current today as it did when it came out. And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
I think we did a great job. And, all those other circumstances were things that were completely out of my control, and I couldn't change anything. So why worry about it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Move on to the next thing.
So let's move on to the Dead Daisies, because there's a massive Aussie connection there. Obviously, you took over from John Stevens, who, okay, he's technically New Zealand, but we own him anyway. We've gone, he's ours.
We tend to do that,
as you should.
Yeah, and you played with Jimmy Barnes' son Jackie as well.
Jackie actually did the first record with us. There was some reason. You got to remember, I was just coming into everything, and I don't know what Brian's reasons were. but he could not be in Australia to record the record. So Jimmy suggested Jackie. He came down, and I thought Jackie did an unbelievable job on that record. He was a lot of fun to hang out with, as was Jimmy. Jimmy came into the studio on a somewhat regular basis, and actually, if you remember, Jimmy actually pitched us a song that he wrote called "Empty Heart."
Yeah, and
so it was great hanging with Jimmy and meeting him, and it was great doing the record with Jackie. And then obviously David Lowy is a Australian as well, and his family history. So we had quite a few ties to Australia on that tour and that record.
Yeah, and I think you supported Kiss and Whitesnake as well. I think you did the Kiss tour down under as well.
Yeah, and it was oddly enough, it was funny so we're supposed to come down there and do a tour with Kiss, and literally 2 weeks before the tour, Richard Fortus got into a motorcycle accident and could not travel. So we had, I think it's Dave Leslie from Baby Animals.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Filled in for Richard. And then as we're rehearsing with David Leslie we came down to Sydney and rehearsed with Dave. And then David Lowy's like, wow, there's a couple shows I'm not going to be able to make because I have some business things to take care of. And we're like, okay, well, here, meet my friend Randall Waller.
Wow,
so
now we're talking.
We did Australia with 2 Australian guitar players. I'm like, wait, this is kind of weird, but okay. And you know what? They kicked ass. It was we had a great run, a lot of fun with those guys. And the Australian ties run deep.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I've actually been talking with Randall about coming on the Bad Boys. He keeps putting it off. I think he might be scared. So, but he's a great guy, and I followed his career.
He's a wanker. I only talk to Randall because I think his wife is hot.
I'll tell him you said that. I'll send him this interview.
No. Trust me, I've said it right to him. The only reason why I let you in my dressing room is because you're with Susie. So just, go help yourself to the cheese platter.
Nice. Now you're coming down under. You're actually going to be by the time this show airs on the Wednesday. You're going to be out and traveling around, touring around. You're going to be in Sydney on Thursday, Brisbane on Wednesday the 8th of June, Melbourne on Thursday the 9th of June, Adelaide the 10th of June, and Perth the 11th of June. What can people expect from your tour? You're obviously it's more of an acoustic, intimate setting, right?
Yeah, there's you know what? I love doing these things. I love playing acoustic guitar and just pretty much every song I've ever written, I started on acoustic. So I decided, a few years back that I was going to start doing these things. And when I initially started, I was doing 3 songs, 4 songs from the Scream, and then 3 or 4 songs from the Motley record. And then I was going through my whole catalog and I was doing 20, 25 songs. But then at the end of the night, I would sit at the bar or sit at the merch table, whatever. And the fans would be asking me things like, why do you do that cover song? Or, so the lyrics to Father, Mother, Son, what is that about? And I would sit there and I would talk with them. And then I had this kind of aha moment where I went, you know what? Maybe it's not about cramming in as many songs as possible. maybe it's do less songs and tell the stories on stage about how the songs came about and, you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, I started doing that. And trust me, a few of the stories are a little long in the tooth. And I try to make them as funny as possible. So it's almost like a comedy show.
Yeah.
But the fans so far have been like, dude, I've always loved your music, but I swear to God, you could have not even played. I would have rather heard the stories.
Yeah.
The stories were awesome. So it's really a low key, it's literally me with an acoustic guitar, no frills, no backing tapes. It's just one microphone, one guitar, one DI, a stool, maybe a table next to me with a whiskey, and
now you're talking.
I just talk and play music, and I set some of the songs up. Some of them I don't, you know, but it's just have fun, man. Like, we've been in the house now for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I just want to have fun. You know, and I want everybody else to have fun.
I love that idea.
And if you don't have fun, F you, I'll kill you.
Look, that's a great idea. And I think a lot of people, they want a level of intimacy with the stars that they follow and the music that they connect with. But more to the point, they want access to what's going on behind the scenes. Those stories, the detail in those stories, and more to the point, the way the storyteller like yourself tells it. It's a really engaging thing.
And there's a very long story that I tell. It's actually even in the book. And I talk about, as a fan, I was the guy that was up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a snowstorm to go get tickets, like good seats, to see Aerosmith back in the day, in the 70s.
Nice.
And then I had the opportunity to not only meet Steven, but I had a long conversation with him sitting on a couch, just me and Steven. I had an acoustic guitar in my hand, and I literally just sat there and I got to ask him questions as a fan.
Yeah.
Even though Tommy and Nikki didn't want me to do it, but I did it anyway. And I asked him questions about, hey, what's this song about? Or, like, what does that title mean? Like, what does it mean? And he would tell me these stories. And I relay this in the show because, you know, it's kind of common knowledge now. I do the song it's an old Aerosmith song from the second record called Seasons of Wither.
Right.
And I do this whole, I mean, the story itself is probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes long, but I tell the whole story and it's funny and it's, you know, whatever. And then I start playing the song, but it was like, as a fan, it was so awesome to be able to sit down with my hero and go, Steven, how did you, like, what does that mean? What is Seasons of Wither? Like, what were you, you know? And he told me the whole story, how he wrote it, the night that he wrote it, like, just all this stuff. And it's like, wow, oh my God, like, killer. So, you know, I have a little fun with it. I tell the story. It's funnier. It's kind of funny, you know, but it's long. I apologize for it being long, but I tell the story anyway. And then I do the song and they're like, oh my God, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I've had a few fans now go, you know what's weird, dude? Like, I love that song. It's one of my all-time favorite Aerosmith songs, but your story was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just have fun with it.
And we do tend to forget, don't we, that, you know, even as an artist, that you've got your heroes as well. And that, you know, you still have fanboy moments.
Oh, my dude, let me tell you a story. I don't think this is in the book.
Yeah.
But when we were doing the Scream album, Eddie Kramer, who was the producer, he was buying all these old microphones, and he had them in boxes all around the studio. And I go, oh, what are these mics, Eddie? Like, he's like, oh, a friend of mine. That's it. Friend of mine is building a home studio, and he likes old classic mics. So I'm buying them, and then when we take our little break, I'm going to fly overseas, and I'm going to deliver these microphones. Great. So one night we're in the studio, and we're in the control room, and the phone rings, and he doesn't even look up. He just starts waving his hand. He goes, somebody get the phone. So I run over to the phone. It was like one of those old business phones with the buttons, the separate lines. And I hit the button, and I pick the phone up, and I go, hello. And on the other end, I hear, hello. This British, hello. Is Eddie Kramer there? And I go, yeah. Who's calling? And he goes, oh, it's Paul McCartney.
Jeez.
And I go, yeah, hold on. And I never hit the hold button. I just put the phone down, which hung up on him.
Oh, no.
Right? So I sit there, I go, fuck. Eddie's like, what? I go, it was Paul McCartney. He's like, oh, okay, whatever. Give me the phone. I go, I hung up on him. And he's like, so everybody in the room's like, good one, Crab. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So the phone rings again, same line. Now I'm trying to be slick. And he's like, get the phone. So I answer the phone. I go, hello. Like, I try to disguise my voice. Hello. And he's like, hello, is Eddie Kramer there? And I go, yeah, who's calling? He goes, Paul McCartney. And I go, all right, hold on a minute. He goes, please don't hang up on me again. I go, hold here. And I'm like, fuck. I was like a little schoolgirl when he called. I couldn't believe it. So, yeah, I remember being at the Rainbow, and, we'd always see Robin Crosby and Stephen Pearcy and all these, Nikki Sixx, Mick Mars. But then one night, Jimmy Page walked in.
Oh.
And even those guys were like, there he is.
Yeah.
There he is. And it was like you could hear a pin drop when he walked in. Like it was like a Western.
Wow.
He literally walked in, sat down at his own table. They brought him a bottle of Jack Daniels and one glass. And he just sat there and he drank the whiskey. And even Nikki Sixx, all of us, we were just sitting there looking at him. Like, it was like God just walked into the room.
Right.
Who's first? Who's going to go and talk first?
Well.
That's crazy.
Nobody did. Nobody even went to walk. It was like, nope, not going to happen. And he sat there, he drank almost the entire bottle, and then he just got up and he walked out.
Wow.
And I'm like, so yeah, we're musicians, but we're also fans first.
Yeah.
It's it is what it is.
That's awesome.
You've already told us a number of stories and everything like that, but what's your favorite gig? What was your favorite venue? What was the moment that stands out amongst all of them? Because I know, someone with your career history and stuff like that, I mean, look, there's got to be a long list. But what would be the pinnacle moment that you've played?
Very easy. That's a very easy question to answer. When I was with the Daisies, we did a show in Poland. It's oddly enough called the Woodstock Festival.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a free concert. And we did it the first time as an opening act, way down on the bill. The promoter loved the band, and he asked us to come back the following year and headline. And we went back the following year. It's a 3-day festival. I think we headlined the first day.
Yep.
But we did it with a 53-piece orchestra.
Wow. Yeah.
And we literally played, there's video of it. If you look on YouTube, there's some video of us they asked us to do our set, but it's called Woodstock Peace and Love, or Peace and whatever festival. So the guy that ran it, he said, "Hey, I'd like you to do this with an orchestra, and I'd like you to also play these songs." And they picked a few songs that they wanted us to do. One was Neil Young, "Rockin' in the Free World."
Yeah.
They wanted us to do this old Louis Armstrong song called "It's a Beautiful World."
Yep.
Nice.
Love that song.
We did "Give Peace a Chance."
Nice.
And we did "Let It Be"
Wow.
by the Beatles.
Yeah, imagine all of those
And
songs with an orchestra.
thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and we did our entire set, almost 2 hours, with a 53-piece orchestra in front of about 200,000 people.
Nuts.
Wow, that's
So
nice.
that was definitely a highlight.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John Karabi, for joining us on Bad Boys. We might actually play one of the tracks from that live gig. We'll find it and put it on after the interview, just so everyone can hear the incredible sound of the orchestra as well with the Dead Daisies. Yeah.
Well, it's there. I highly recommend "Let It Be." It came out unbelievable.
Nice.
So
Sounds good. Well, look, I hope the tour goes well, and you enjoy the Australian winter or autumn as it is.
how is the weather down there? Like, your winters are still pretty mild, right? It's not like up here in the States, snow and any of that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Well, I'm in
not really.
Tasmania, so everything's fucking cold, but
Yeah, look, in Australia, we don't have the type of cold winters that you're used to in the States. Having said that, we do have a couple of cold days rolling in mid next week. But again,
right when you arrive.
yeah, look, it's going to be nothing like what you're used to. So it'll be pretty mild.
All right, but thank you guys, and hope to see you when I'm down there.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.